The iPhone 14 and the 14 Pro have been out now for about 6 months. I've just got all of the 14 and I've had the 14 Pro for 6 months, and here's what I think about them both. To start off with, the iPhone 14 is a very minor update. The iPhone 14 still has the A15 Bionic chip, which was in the iPhone 13 lineup. In addition to that, the screen's exactly the same, you don't get the dynamic island. To be honest, it's not really worth the £100 increase in price from the iPhone 13 to actually warrant the upgrades you're getting. One of the few features that you do get with the iPhone 14 over the 13 lineup is you do get the crash detection, you do get satellite connectivity, and hopefully those two features you'll never need to use. So to be honest, save yourself £100, get yourself an iPhone 13, and yeah. But we can't end the video there, so let's actually go into a bit further of what the iPhone 14 does, and then we'll go on to the 14 Pro. The iPhone 14 looks exactly the same as the iPhone 13. There aren't actually any differences in how the device looks, so you wouldn't be able to tell whether you've got a 13 or a 14. And the internals as well are very similar. The camera is pretty much the same. You do get auto-focusing on the front-facing camera with the 14, and you do get to record at 24 FPS in cinematic mode. Those two are software features, so realistically that could have been on the 13 too. I'm looking to be able to actually test out both phones, but I would never recommend the iPhone 14 to anyone. Just full stop really. If you're wanting a 14, go for like a 13 Pro second hand, or especially if you're going for a 14 Plus as well, you might as well save £100 and buy like a second hand 13 Pro Max, because at least then you're getting the better cameras, you're getting a ProMotion display at 120Hz. It's a nicer design as well with the stainless steel edges and the frosted glass back. The 13 Pro is a much better buy if you can get one refurbished, you can get a second hand one in good condition. You might as well do that, because the 14 is just a rip-off. Now, if you do want a brand new phone, and you don't want to spend too much money, the iPhone 13 is overall better value. There's just literally no point in buying the 14. Moving on to the more expensive phone, the iPhone 14 Pro is a massive upgrade from the 13. If you do have a 14 Pro, it's very obvious you have one over a 13 Pro by just looking at the dynamic island. As cringy as the name is, it is pretty cool. Now, being totally honest, after 6 months of using this phone, I don't really use it. Like, I'm gonna be totally honest, it's nice to have when I'm like, for example, I've ordered an Uber and it says like 4 minutes away. That's quite cool, I can do other things and it tells me what to do, but realistically don't actually need it. Same with like shuffling music, like I don't even like hold on the dynamic island to change a song to see what I'm listening to. If I want to change my song, I'll just double tap on my AirPods and it'll change it. One of the main improvements of the 14 Pro is the camera quality. You are getting a 48 megapixel main camera. Now, comparing that to Samsung phones, that's not a lot, but at the end of the day, you're still getting absolutely beautiful photos, and you can still record at 4K, 24, 30, 60 FPS, and you do get really good software. And phone cameras are getting so good these days that realistically, comparing an S23 Ultra to an iPhone 14 Pro, there's not really much difference. Now, comparing the 14 and the 14 Pro, the battery life side of things, they are both really good. Now, I haven't been able to try the bigger models of the phones, so the 14 Plus and the 14 Pro Max, but having tried both phones, I would even say maybe the 14's got better battery life than the Pro. It's probably down to the always on display and the ProMotion as well. Now, as of recording this video, the iPhone 14 Pro is on sale at the moment, down to £1,039. So at the moment it's a great time to buy, but now it is going to April in the year and the new phone's going to be out in September or October. Should you really wait? That's a big question. Now, if you need a new phone now, get an iPhone 14 Pro. It's going to be great. It's going to last you a good 4 or 5 years if you really need it to, because realistically I don't think there's going to be that much of an upgrade with the 15 Pro, but we'll see. Now, going back to the standard version of the iPhone 14, I would absolutely wait. I would either go for a 13 or I would wait for the 15, because by the looks of it, we're going to have USB-C charging, we're going to have the dynamic island on all models of the iPhone, so waiting for the iPhone 15 is a great time for the standard phone. Hopefully this won't come with too much of a bigger price tag, but knowing Apple, it'll probably be £1,000. But yeah, I would either go for a 13 or a 14 Pro. Now, in terms of specs for the phones, on the iPhone 14, you are getting an A15 Bionic chip, whereas on the 14 Pro you do get the A16. Now, a few of the differences between the 14 and the 14 Pro. So the actual screen quality as well. So on the 14 you do only get a 60Hz display, whereas on the 14 Pro you do get that variable refresh rate, which goes from 1Hz all the way up to 120Hz. Now let's have a look at the cameras, and I'm just going to show you a few examples comparing the iPhone 14 photos compared to the 14 Pros. For this example here, I'm just comparing the two main cameras, so the cameras that you will be using as soon as you open the camera app. Now, this is just JPEG file, no raw photos at all, and to be honest, I quite like how the 14 looks. You are kind of getting a bit more of a vibrant photo, whereas the 14 Pro is a bit more true to life. I suppose the actual, like the mud and the leaves, they do a little bit more realistic, whereas the 14 you are getting a bit more saturation. But overall, both, you can't complain with either photo, they're both very nice. Now, I don't know what I was going for in terms of photos here, but I just wanted to kind of show the depth of field you can get with these two phones. Now, yet again, we are using both the two main cameras, both using 12 megapixel cameras, because I'm not taking raw photos on the 14 Pro here. But yet again, two beautiful photos. I mean, the blur is really natural on both phones. I'd say you'll see this a lot with the 14. It does sort of a bit of artificial depth of field a lot with the 14, whereas on the 14 Pro, because you are getting that bigger sensor, you are getting quite a nice realistic depth of field effect, and you will see this more later on in a few more photos. But yeah, overall, both beautiful photos. Now, these two are a bit bizarre, because not only have I got one main subject with a bright light source, I am also using a tube light as well to add a bit more complication and see how the phones manage with it. But to be honest, I quite like how the 14 has come out with these images. Now the 14 Pro looks a bit too grainy, a bit too noisy. I do like the softer look of the 14. Now maybe it's not quite as sharp in certain areas, but I do like the softer background blur. It is a really nice photo. But yeah, can't really complain with either of these photos. They're just different really. Now these two photos really show why you pay that extra money for the 14 Pro. The macro cameras. Now both phones, same position, same distance from the controller, and look at the difference. Now in terms of lighting, I am using two teal and orange lights just separately. No particularly fancy lighting, just add a bit of nice lighting to the photo. Now the 14 is just a mess. You don't get any, it's just a big blur. With the 14 Pro, look at the detail you are getting in terms of the macro photo. You can't complain with the 14 Pro. It's really nice. Now, yet again, two photos, same angle, using both 12 megapixel cameras. Now, looking at this angle without zooming in, they both look really similar. There's not that much difference. Now, you can tell the 14 Pro photo is nicer. It's a bit sharper. It's a bit less blurred. But it's when you start zooming into these photos when you really see the imperfections of the 14, and you see where the 14 Pro shines with that bigger sensor. Yeah, so have a look here. This is just me zooming in Photoshop. Now, because the 14 Pro's camera does have a lower aperture naturally, without having to do that much post-processing with depth of field, you are getting a much sharper edge, whereas it looks a lot softer on the edges with the 14. Overall, just nowhere near as high quality. And the 14 Pro, you are getting much sharper text as well on the main subject. Everything just looks a bit sharper and more polished on the 14 Pro. Yet again, this is just zooming in to some of the text on the can. Now, it's actually not that much difference. Now they're both legible, you can both still read text, but obviously the 14 Pro is much sharper. But I think that might be to do with the AI. I'm not really sure. I think it could have been a fluke. I'm not too sure on this one, but you can definitely tell the difference with the last photo more than you can on this one. But yeah, overall, the 14 Pro is a much better camera system. Now, if you're just taking photos every day, get your 14, it's fine. But yeah, overall, the 14 Pro is miles better in terms of, especially with your telephoto lens and your macro lens. It's just so much nice to have that extra flexibility when taking photos. But yeah, let's move on. Now, if you are looking to bump up your storage on the phones, you can only have up to 512 gigabytes of storage on the iPhone 14, whereas on the iPhone 14 Pro you can have up to 1 terabyte. But realistically, I don't think you're going to need even more than 128 gigabytes for most people. I've got 128 gigabytes and I barely used 80. I do a lot of video recording, stuff like that. So realistically, you don't need any more than the standard storage, and it just costs a lot as well. So save yourself some money. Now both phones do come with an IP68 water resistance. So if you drop them in the bath, you should be alright. I wouldn't recommend it, but you don't have to have a heart attack if you do by accident. It's always good to know. One of the great things as well about the 14 Pro is that you do get that peak brightness of 2000 nits. So you won't see this all the time, but if you're in like the middle of a sunny day outside and usually you can't see your phone because of the sun, this should solve the problem. Now it won't be able to do it for a long time because it'll heat up a lot and it'll have to dim the brightness anyway. But when you need your phone screen quickly, it will be able to bump up that brightness so you can see it in broad daylight, which is great. Now neither of these phones are cheap. In fact, quite the opposite. Now the iPhone 14 you can get at the moment for £794 in the UK, and with the iPhone 14 Pro it is about £60 knocked off. You can get it for £1,039 right now, and I will leave links down below if you are interested in buying these phones. They are on sale, so be quick. And if you do decide to purchase these as well, they are affiliate links, so I will get a little bit of commission on it, not too much, but I appreciate it. So if you are looking to buy it, press the link down below, much appreciated. Right guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe. But yeah, in summary, if you're looking for a new iPhone, go for the 13 or the 14 Pro. Please just avoid the standard 14 and the 14 Plus. They're not very good value. But yeah, if the iPhone 14 Pro is a bit too expensive, maybe look at a 13 Pro second hand or refurbished, because they are much better buys if you can get them for the same price as the 14. And I will leave a couple of links down below to some websites I do trust in terms of second hand buys. One of the main websites, if you are in the UK, that I do trust because you do get 2 years warranty for second hand products is CEX. Now this place does have a bit of an interesting reputation. Some bad experiences, some really good experiences. But in my experience, if you're just an half decent person, they're gonna treat you nice. Like, you do get 2 years warranty with all the products you do buy from there, and I use them a lot. And in fact, the iPhone 14 Pro that you are looking at right now, which I am recording with today, I did actually purchase from CEX when all the phones were out of stock at the beginning of the cycle. Now, I do have 2 years of warranty with that. They do cover me if anything happens. So if my phone does break on me, they will sort me out. And overall, I do rate CEX. It's a really good company. People are nice. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.